Good evening and welcome to Struggle to Success and Wellbeing. This is the last of 6-week workshop, and it's been a very interesting, inspirational, educational, and informative journey, especially for myself. When we first thought about the idea, the Legacy Foundation was sponsored by the lottery fund to come up with some support mental health services for our community, and we came up with this idea of calling on our networks, the Legacy Gala network of Black professionals, to come and share their story and share their testimony of how they got to a place of success and to share their struggles. I'm saying so. Today, it's the last day, and we're sad, but we're happy that we've been able to inspire people along the way. Last week we covered hope for the hopeless. The week before that it was resilience through rejection. The week before that we covered relationships. And the week before that it was bereavement, and the week before that it was prison to purpose. So I've got there in the end. Yeah. So, well done. So today we're gonna be talking about family matters. I'm joined with Basil Links, co-host, Lee Lawrence, co-host, Deisha Gordon who is normally our lead co-host. She's not here today, but we just want to honor her in her absence. Hopefully, if she's feeling under the weather today, but hopefully if she can, she will join. It's going to be a dynamic show. It's going to be a real show today, and it's going to be very interesting. We've got 3 dynamic guests, and I'm going to pass over to Lee Lawrence just to introduce them.
Okay. So that was a good introduction, Milo, off the top of your head. You remembered all the show. I was thinking, I can't remember all of them, but well done. And it has been fantastic, and as well as there was a format, it's been quite organic as well in terms of the way that things have come together, in terms of the guests that we've had. We've had some experts like counsellors and all different people from education coming and giving their expert views and opinions as well. So therefore, I feel it's been very informative. And the whole point of it was to look at what tools people can use or learn from others around how they dealt with their struggles to success. Because a lot of times we only see where people are, and we don't necessarily understand the journey of where they're coming from to actually be where they are today. So we were just doing that in terms of to inspire people, and that people can learn something. And we know that especially now with the current climate, there's a lot of people struggling just to survive. So it's about saying, okay, maybe people be inspired enough to say, if you can do it, then maybe I can do it. Today I'm really excited to introduce three lovely ladies, a mother and 2 daughters, who someone just said in here, called them sheroes, and I would agree with that. They were courageous and, decided to do something and intervene, which prevented a possible kidnap, a possible sexual assault, and who knows, it could have been as horrific as a murder. So I was just happy that when I first saw the video, I didn't even know who it was that was filming. And I was sitting there thinking, these people are so brave to go up to this person and film them, because this boy looked like really aggressive as well. So I was thinking they're so courageous to do so. And when I found out that I actually knew them, I was even more proud, right? Because they're like family to me. So I just want to introduce Mum Christine, Zayan, and Ashanti. How you doing, ladies?
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
So let's get straight into it. Zayan, 11 years old. 12.
Hi.
How old are you now, Zion?
I'm 11, but I'm turning 12 tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh,
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
You're 12 tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're Scorpio, like me. My birthday's Friday.
I won't give away his age, but it's birthday tomorrow as well.
That's sweet. Happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Zion, can you just tell us what happened on that day, if you don't mind?
So I was going to school, and I was walking down my road, and I saw a man, and he had his hand over a girl's mouth. So I called my sister, and I told her that I think I've just seen a girl being kidnapped. And then she was like kind of questioning it. She didn't. I don't know if she believed what I was saying. And then she gave the phone to my mum, and I told my mum the exact same thing.
Okay.
And then what happened after that?
So then my sister told me to keep going to school. That's what I did. But so yeah, when I was on my way to school, my sister called me again, and she told me that I needed to come home because what I saw was right, and that they was coming to our house with the girl and with the police.
Okay. So, so at that point, was it you then, Ashanti, that took over and started filming?
Yeah. So well, before that, my mum actually, my mum asked her where she had seen them and where they were going, and she said that they was walking towards our house, like down our road. So my mum actually went outside and approached them as she saw them coming down the road, and she was asking like, is everything okay? Is everything all right? And I think he was just shouting, basically saying, yeah, everything's fine. And then at that point, that's when my mum screamed at me and was like, call the police. So it's from then on, we actually phoned the police while we were still at home. And then I had a really long conversation with the police because I don't think, they didn't really believe what we were saying, and they wasn't really acting fast. So after that, we just decided we're going to go out there ourselves. And then that's when I started recording.
Okay. So basically, you're saying when you called the police, you thought they weren't taking you seriously and they weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because we started off the conversation with my little sister has just phoned me and basically told me what she's seen. I think from that point, they like just didn't believe it because we said she's 11. They just thought she's just.
There was a lot of questions before action.
So you decided to take the matters in your own hands, do the film yourself, and then post that on social media.
Literally that.
And then was it only after that you felt like the police were starting to take this thing seriously?
Yeah. So as you see, the video ending is when the police actually arrive.
They're still there.
So but they don't actually chase him at that point. It's very weird. It was they was just questioning a lot again. Like, we don't know what we're coming to. Like, what's actually happening here? And my mum's screaming at them, saying, like, chase him, and they're not listening at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, your mum was telling you who to chase him.
The police.
Oh, okay. Oh, the police was on the scene.
On the scene. When
as you see him run away, that's when the police arrived.
So hold on a minute. When you was walking around the flat, so you said it was you that was saying, what you doing with that girl? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then what was he said something that kind of struck me. He said, that's family, bruv.
Yeah, he was saying, that's my family. That's my sister.
My family.
Stop stalking me.
Obviously, you didn't believe that.
No.
What was it that you didn't believe?
Well, even if it was his sister, what was he was standing in the corner with her in an alleyway. So whether it was his sister or not, it was.
And we just seen him with a yellow glove over her mouth.
The behavior wasn't right for family.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then you continue to follow him because he was walking off with her, right?
Yeah.
So was you scared?
Yeah. Yeah, because he's very tall. He's very tall. That's why I wasn't getting so close.
Yeah. And how old was the girl that he was trying to abduct? 13.
Yeah.
Wow. So that could have been your little sister.
Well, she was 3 minutes behind.
She saw it, so
she
it
just
could have
was
been
3
her.
minutes behind them.
So in terms of after the police started to give chase, what happened? He ran off. The police ran
That
off.
was it. He ran off. He got away, and then
The policeman said he didn't know the area.
Yeah, the policeman basically said he can't chase him because he doesn't know the area well. So.
Wow. So what if it wasn't for your video? You probably would have got away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
And I was speaking to Mum, Christine, yesterday, and she was saying to me that it was because of when the video was going viral, people were then sending back information about who this person was, where this person lived.
But they knew him. People knew him.
So basically, they done the police's work
for them.
Yeah. Right? So the police didn't actually find this person. It was your efforts of putting it out there and the community responding.
Ashanti filmed it, and when we came back into the house, there was just loads of police in the house and outside our house. So Ashanti came upstairs to Narissa, her eldest sister, and showed it to her. And Narissa said, "I'm putting it on social media," and that's what happened.
Okay. So since that time, have you met up with the young lady that was abducted, and her family?
Only on one occasion, because obviously it's a long road now, so we got to keep a distance and stuff, because obviously key witnesses and stuff like that. So we're not allowed to meet up with her, but we have met up with her on one occasion.
Okay. And how did that meeting go? Emotional?
Yeah,
I can imagine so.
Yeah. When the boy ran off, you still had the video rolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she just broke down.
Yeah, literally.
How did you feel about that? What was she saying?
Well, I broke down with her. So I started crying as well, because I couldn't believe that what we had actually seen was happening, like it was real. So it was a very weird experience and a feeling.
That's the first time that has ever happened to you, right?
Yeah.
You've never seen or heard anything like that happen in the past.
No. Like you see it on TV, you see it on the news and stuff like that, but live in the flesh. Are you how are you at the moment? Do you need to see a counselor or anything about that traumatic situation?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's traumatic.
Has anybody reached out to you? Or have you?
Yeah.
Anybody? Yeah.
Quite a few people actually.
Yeah, counselors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So, where did that courage come from? Where did that thing come from that made you think, regardless of how scary this is, I've got to do something about this?
Just like when it's happening, you just get a feeling like you don't really think about it. It just happened. I don't know.
So it's like you went into like autopilot mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
They say flight. Is it fight or flight mode?
Yeah.
You know? And it says a lot about your characters. It says a lot about Mum and the way that she's managed to raise you girls, right? Stand up, you know. And I was so happy that the community responded in the way that they did towards you as well, because I think too many times we want to highlight all the negative things that happen. So for once, I won't say for once, but this was a rare occasion where we really, saw the community come together. I saw them really commending what was done. And I think you brought a lot to the surface, because there was a lot of people that I spoke to personally who was really emotional when they watched that video. I mean, even I got really upset, felt, getting warm.
They showed a lot of you showed a lot of compassion. You was like a good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
You was like your brother's keeper. You really, you broke down where she broke down. You intervened. You prevented it. And what would you say to other young people that because this is going on? but it's highlighted. You've highlighted and brought it to the forefront. And what would you say to other young people that suspect these things, or and probably turn a blind eye, or don't get involved or don't prevent it? What would you say to them?
Obviously, I know it's not easy, because I know I didn't find it easy. I'm probably, if I wasn't with my mum, I might not have reacted the same way, because I felt like I had someone with me. But if you can, just try and do the same thing, and definitely be recording. I don't think I realized how important it actually is, but having the footage and the evidence makes a big difference.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have potentially been just your word against his word.
Literally, yeah.
His word that they could even catch him.
Yeah.
Even when we look at George Floyd, I mean, it was a video recording that made that go viral and started an uprising around the whole world, in a sense, right? So it just goes to show, as you said, how important it is to record that as it's happening. And I suppose the difference with your situation is that you didn't just record. With the George Floyd situation, it was recorded and nobody intervened.
Yeah.
They did. Maybe he would, be alive today, where you actually intervened and prevented something from happening. So at least now we're not talking about this in a sense of, this terrible thing happened and, that little girl's life's ruined. You prevented that. So, well done to you, yeah? Well done.
I mean, what I would love to do on behalf of Legacy Foundation, Basil, and Disha, is to give you first of all, appreciate you, recognize you, and to give you a gift, especially as it's your birthday.
Yes.
We would like to give you a gift, some monetary gift, so you can do whatever you would like with it, but it's £500. And
You
get your bank details, and then on behalf of Legacy Foundation, we will transfer that into your account, just as a token and of our appreciation as a you're our extended family. You could be my niece, you could be my daughter, and we just, you was your brother's keeper. You looked out for your sister. You showed compassion, and that's what family matters. That's what family is about. So, just use this as a milestone, and let it propel you as a platform to greater things. Yeah.
Thank you.
So well done, and again, I think you've just really shed light on something as well. There's a lot of people who were maybe silent about these things, whether they've witnessed it or gone through it themselves, and maybe now through that act and through that going viral, people are now going to be a lot more open and speak up about these things, and more importantly, intervene. Right, because they've seen you do it now, and they've seen, okay, you can intervene in a way, and we've seen from the beginning to the end, something happened and someone's got caught for it as well, and hopefully justice will be served as well. And
I'd like to say, you see, social media, I've never done social media, but I saw it on that day used in a positive way, and it made me think, can use social media, but I've seen people use it in negative ways and do crazy videos and stuff, but I saw it used positive, and I saw the public get involved in a very positive way, and that touched me in a big way.
And many others were touched as well. I think that showed a lot of us as well how, one, social media can be used positively, and two, how there's always this negative view on us as a people, especially as us Black people, that we stick together, we don't help each other out. But that showed real community spirit.
Definitely. It was the public that caught him.
Basically, it was.
We started it, the public finished it.
I would like to call them the family, the extended family, because
the family.
that wasn't public. That was family, brothers, uncles, aunts,
everybody.
Everybody was concerned.
Yeah.
Everybody had an interest in what the outcome would be, to make sure that he faced what he needed to face. And to be honest with you, he's probably fortunate that he's facing the police rather than other things.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's still a long road to go now with trial and stuff. So there's still a lot of support needed as well, because it's going to be a long road still for the girls.
Yeah.
Well, we want you to keep in touch with us, let us know what's happening so we can be on support. It's not, as you said, it's not just today. It's going to be a long journey. So keep us informed.
Yeah. And Christine, as we spoke when we spoke yesterday, we will talk as well, especially about the police and how they handled it, because it's an issue in our community where we don't feel that we can trust the police. We don't feel that they have our best interests at heart. And that really is an example of issues that we have, and it really needs to be addressed. Yeah, so we would definitely stay in contact around that.
Definitely.
But stay on the line, because there might be some people that would like to ask you some questions. But if you have to
brother's here, Nathan.
Nathan.
What people? Hello.
Yes, Nathan. So basically, Nathan, Zion and Ashanti's brother.
Is it?
Yeah.
The singer Nathan.
Yeah.
The artist. Need your autograph, brother.
I see you in the room. I see you in the room. Why don't you come into my room?
Yes.
On a serious note, Nathan, how did that, like, when this all happened, it's your little sisters and family and that, how did that affect you, bro? We talk about family.
It affected our whole family. To this day, you can't really watch the video. Every time I watch the video, it's a very emotional video. And to know, obviously, Zion, our little sister, our youngest sister, was just 3 minutes behind. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you think if it was another 3 minutes, it's just a difficult situation to even try and talk about, and even, you know what I mean? Because Zion was very brave. The first thing that she thought was, let me call Ashanti. Yeah, and you got to think, with somebody else in that position, maybe, even if it was me and I was 11, I probably would have just went to school and then maybe made a comment to my mum, later on. Do you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, that was a little bit weird, that what happened this morning, and not even know. So the presence of mind for her to say the first thing that she's going to do is call Ashanti meant a lot in it. It's a very smart thing to do. And then obviously what Ashanti and mum did was the icing on the cake. So but it was emotional to watch the video. So yeah. But we got to big up the family, big up the unit, and big up Christine, and just how the girls have been raised. It's a good look in it. So that's one thing that we could be proud of. Do you know what I mean? So that's the silver lining.
100%.
100%.
Thank you, Nathan. That's good, bro. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Keep with us if you can. We're gonna move on, Gary.
Okay. Have we got
Our next guest?
We've got
Charmin.
Marcia.
Marcia, is she here?
Marcia, we got Marcia. Marcia, my sister, our next guest. How you doing? So let me introduce. That's good. So let me introduce Marcia Riggs, the sister of Sean Riggs, who died in police custody, and I would say killed in police custody. And Marcia has relentlessly campaigned, for justice for her brother. We have a lot in common because we've been on the same journey, and I know how tough that journey is. And I got a lot of respect for you because you're not only there advocating for your brother, you're there to support other people as well. and we're both part of the Inquest Family Reference Group, which is an organisation, a charity that supports bereaved families who are going through inquests. And I know there's a lot more that you're doing. You're very active, and yeah, I'm just going to hand over to you now, my sister, to just, you know, speak about you and your journey.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I'd first of all like to commend those queens for their courageousness and for speaking out and forth justice. The young ladies that just spoke, and it just shows how important people power is, and the fact of social media is very, very important. So I'd like to commend them very much. So thank you for that. But I'll just say a little bit about me first, about my brother, for those who may not know about my brother, who was Sean Rigg. Sean was a musician, a talented, young, handsome man who was my brother. Sadly, Sean suffered with mental health for a period of 20 years, which I think a lot of people in the Black community are familiar with, where Black men are overpopulated within the mental health system. They are also over medicated, and we could, you know, I would go as far as saying medical restraint, because that also is a very big issue. But the issue that I came across is that my brother was restrained following a psychotic episode by Brixton police officers. So there was some emergency 999 calls that had been made to the police to take Sean to a place of safety. He was already in a place of safety because he was living in a hostel in Brixton that was sort of like a halfway house with his mental health team. But Sean hadn't taken his medication and eventually became actively psychotic, where he would have been hallucinating, hearing voices, and was a vulnerable person who was extremely unwell. And so he needed to be taken to a place of safety, which is a hospital. And they called the police, and the police refused to come. And eventually my brother went onto the streets, actively psychotic, obviously somebody suffering from mental health that members of the public could see, and members of the public also called the police. And eventually the police did arrive, and the police restrained him in the prone position, which is face down, and use excessive force towards the back of his neck. In fact, he died just like George Floyd did. And, you know, there are many George Floyds, and there's many Sean Riggs, because this is an issue that has been happening, particularly within the Black community, where excessive force has been used, where their knees or their elbows have been always on our necks. And people have been dying in this way. I call it modern day lynching, basically. And Sean was restrained in that position, face down in grass, for a period of at least 7 minutes in that position. I'm sure he would have tried to utter the words, "I can't breathe," but he was face down in grass, and there's witness evidence to that, and medical evidence to that, and photographic evidence to that. And Sean was actually carrying his passport on the night, a cancelled passport. And what the police actually did, they claimed that they didn't recognise that he was suffering with mental health and that he was being violent. And they actually arrested him for theft of his own passport, claiming that they didn't believe it looked like him. But the inquest jury 4 years later found that they should have known who it was. They should have recognised that he had mental health issues. They should have married up the previous 999 calls that had been made over a period of 3 hours. But and they should have taken him to a hospital, a place of safety. But what happened is they restrained my brother to death. He didn't die on that spot. He was eventually put in the back of a police vehicle, in a caged, locked vehicle, where He was in the footwell area where, you know, there's two black seats and your feet would be there. So it's a very small area where the officers claimed that my brother was upside down on his back, handcuffed to the rear, spinning 360 degrees with his feet walking against the cage wall inside the police vehicle. A very implausible account, because Sean would have been very unwell and he would have been restrained for up to 7 minutes, and the medical evidence shows that there was a lack of oxygen going to his brain, and basically my brother was dying. And they sped back to Brixton Police Station on their blues and twos as if it was an emergency. But though they claimed that he was kicking off in the back of the van and that he was being violent, and if he was doing this, they were actually speeding back and going on to the pavement, back to the station. And they would have been radio transmissions that were made to the station. They were radio transmissions, some of which are missing. And then he was taken to the station where they were expecting him. But he was kept in the back of the police vehicle in the yard for up to 11 minutes, claiming that the custody suite was busy and that he was being violent, and so they kept him in the van. And the sergeant claimed that he went to the van and looked at my brother, who was sitting up, and he looked at him directly in his eyes, and that there was nothing wrong with him. But, you know, we proved that the officer had lied, because he did nothing of the sort. He didn't go anywhere near the van, and he never really left the custody area. And after 11 minutes, my brother was heavily assisted by two police officers. At that time, there was a caged area, the holding cell, that was the entrance to Brixton custody suite. So it was like a matter of a few seconds where he wasn't dead, but he was very unwell and wouldn't have been able to make that walk by himself. And within a few seconds, it's captured on CCTV where my brother is on the floor, collapsed. But the officers claimed that Sean was faking it and that he was asleep. So you've got a man that they claim that is being violent, being brought into Brixton Police Station, and he is allowed to just sit and sleep in one of the most notorious police stations in London. In fact, what would have happened if Sean could have walked, we would have been taken directly to a cell. But what transpired is they still put him in a prone position. His head is hanging down. He's put into a recovery position. He's even stood up. He was stood up, and the officers claimed that he just stood up by himself, which was ridiculous, because on camera it is blatantly obvious and clear that the officers bend down and stand him up, and his head is hanging down. And the jury found that he would have been fully unconscious at that point. He was arrested at 20 to 8. It's now about 10 past 8. My brother's fully unconscious. I believe he was actually dead, because officers can be heard saying, "You can't get a dead man standing." And then what they do is they let go of him and he falls to his knees, and they put him in a recovery position, but you can't see him on camera. In fact, there was a camera, bird's eye view camera, looking down on the cage. That went missing. They claimed that it didn't exist, and then they claimed it hadn't been working for 3 months. But we knew that camera did exist, and we'd never got that camera. And there was another camera in the yard that would have been facing the van when he was kept there for 11 minutes. Those cameras have gone missing. But we were able to use cameras that were inside, CCTV cameras that were inside the police station, which captured Sean's last moments. And you see Sean literally die on camera, and the officers are just standing around him, doing nothing. My brother would have been scared. You know, can you imagine, you are dying, because he did die and he was dying, and you've got 6 police officers at your feet standing, hovering over you, and they do absolutely nothing to help you. And my brother dies. And that was a very traumatic thing to see. But as a family member, when we got that call hours in the night, you know, like he would have been dead at 8:24, because that's when the officers shout for defib, and that's when they claim that they realised he wasn't breathing, because they hadn't brought a doctor to him. It's a long story, but basically he dies there. And the ambulance crew arrived and had taken him, and he was pronounced dead at 9:24 p.m. But he was dead at the station, certainly by 8:24 p.m., which is what the jury found, because they are conducting CPR. But he was pronounced dead an hour later, and I believe he was actually dead before 8:24 p.m. and there's evidence that we can use. But what transpired after that was we were told about the death in the middle of the night at about 2:30 in the morning, by which time Scotland Yard, the Department of Professional Standards, the officers and the IPCC, as they then were, had conducted 3 meetings at Brixton Police Station, concocted a press release, and all sorts happened. And then they came and knocked us in the middle of the night and said, your brother has died. He just suddenly collapsed in police custody, suddenly. And we do not know what's happened. But we went into complete investigative mode as a family, because we started to ask questions at the very beginning, at 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, which was, well, can we identify the body? Can we see him? You're telling us he's dead. The first thing you want to see is your loved one. And they were telling us, no, you can't, because he's sealed off in a body bag. And basically that his body belongs to the state. Because what happens when your loved one dies in state custody, police custody, they seize the body, because the body belongs to them. It's extraordinary. And they offered us his passport, the very same passport that they claimed that he had stolen, and wanted us to identify him from that, which made absolutely no sense to us, because that didn't prove that he was dead. But another thing that they were asking was that they wanted to know if he had any medical issues. They wanted us to sign over a medical release form so that they could get hold of his medical records. And my brother said, people don't just die in police custody just like that. And will the police be able to get hold of his records? And basically we refused, because we felt, and I believe to that day, that they wanted to find out, if he had any medical issues, and that they could put the death onto that, which is what happened in all deaths in custody, many of them, where they all say he had a bad heart or he had a heart attack, and they all claim that the restraint had absolutely nothing to do with the death. But my brother was fit and healthy, no drugs or alcohol in his system. All he had was, he was psychotic, and mental health, a psychotic episode does not kill you. And what transpired is that we had to go completely into investigative mode, because they would not interview the police officers. In fact, it took 7 months for them to interview the police officers to find out what happened on the night, and Sean died in their hands. And, and that was because of the family campaign, my family campaign, because after 2 months, they still hadn't interviewed the officers, and we had to make a complaint to the Metropolitan Police and the IPCC and force them to eventually interview the officers, by which time they would have had time to collude. And, police officers are allowed to sit in a room together and get their statements of facts together, which is extraordinary. And then, the IPCC's investigation was completely flawed, and we had more questions after more questions. But one of the things is what I would like to say that was so traumatizing to the family, that eventually when we did get Sean's body back for burial, it was after 7 weeks, by which time, you know, he had an autopsy immediately the next morning, which we didn't know was going to happen. You know, we didn't get to see him on that night. We did try to stop the autopsy because we luckily found out about the charity inquest that was on the case with us within a matter of hours. And we tried to stop the autopsy, but we couldn't. And the state will conduct an autopsy immediately, the Home Office. And they wanted to give us the body back for burial, but we kept the body back, and we wanted our own pathologist report, which was important, which happened 5 weeks later. And our pathologist, when he went to do the autopsy, Sean's heart and brain was not in his body. It had been removed. And we went ballistic, and, you know, we wanted to know where it was, because the IPCC had not told us. So they probably would have given us Sean's body back without those body parts. And in fact, I'm sorry to tell you that this has happened in many cases. Like Brian Douglas, for instance, was buried without his brain. And I've met many families that found out after an inquest that their loved one was not buried with all their body parts, namely the heart and or brain. So you know, eventually we did get that back. But what was more traumatizing is when they gave us the body back after 7 weeks, Sean was badly decomposed. So what they do is they give you back decomposed bodies, and Sean was completely unrecognizable. And I believe that is a way of covering up the medical evidence. And it was awful. And my mother had to see her son like that, where his skin was falling off, and he was unrecognizable. And we went to dress him, and we couldn't do it. And I remember holding my sister up, and I was in shock. And you know, we gave the funeral directors his clothes to bury him, and we buried him in an Ethiopian cloak fit for a king, and his favorite velvet suit and his bowler hat. And eventually I did go up and see Sean, and it was only by his fingers that I recognized that it was him. And I vowed from that very day that I was going to find out what happened, and I would never give up to find out what happened to Sean. And I was horrified to meet other families, to find that they had suffered the same fate, because I hadn't heard of deaths in custody before Sean died. And I was horrified to see that there have been hundreds and thousands of people that have died in police custody over the past 50 years in this country. There's never been a successful conviction of any police officer in police custody, which in itself does not balance. And I, as a family member, have had to fight tooth and nail. We had an inquest which the coroner would not allow unlawful killing or neglect, and directed the jury to give a narrative verdict. And so the coroner system is set to fail for families because it's not a criminal jurisdiction. It's only a court to find out who, how, when, and how they died. But it had a jury, and that jury found that the actions or inactions of the officers more than minimally contributed to Sean's death. And at the time, that was 4 years later, by the way. It took 4 years for us to get the inquest to find out how Sean died. In the meantime, we were making a documentary with somebody called Ken Farrow, Who Polices the Police? And the family, we had a mass media campaign, and we used, we protested, we used social media to put pressure on the government and the IPCC to do a proper investigation, to keep it in the public domain. And when we published Who Polices the Police on the day of the inquest verdict that found that the officers contributed to Sean's death by the restraint, that triggered for the first time the IPCC commissioning a review into themselves, which had never happened before. And we had the Casale review, which found that the IPCC was fundamentally flawed. The investigation was fundamentally flawed, and the way that they generally do investigations into deaths in custody. And that prompted my case to be reopened as a criminal investigation, which went on for years. We also then had a perjury trial, which was the first perjury trial in a death in custody in the UK, because I felt that if we can't get them on manslaughter, let's get them on lying, because officers lie through their teeth. And the officer that claimed that he went to the van, and we proved on CCTV that he did nothing of the sort. And I had to appeal that, but eventually the Crown Prosecution Service, for the first time, had to make a U-turn because they found that there was insufficient evidence for a successful conviction. And that actually did go to trial. But when it went to trial, it was basically a kangaroo court, and that officer was acquitted. Another long story. One of the officers also became a priest in the Church of England whilst he was being investigated. And we found out by receiving an anonymous phone call from somebody that said that he was going to be ordained, and he was allowed to retire by the Metropolitan Police without the family knowing. But what was extraordinary in Sean's case was that he'd handed in his notice, he had left, and he was going to be ordained in the church. But when I found out, he still hadn't served his full notice period. He actually had 5 days left. He was on holiday and he was enjoying his life. And I instructed my solicitors immediately to set a precedent, because he was still effectively employed by the Metropolitan Police. And I judicial reviewed it. And for the first time also, the Metropolitan Police had to make a U-turn decision and suspended him, and he could not retire. There were many reviews where he took it to the High Court to try and lift that. But because of my mass media campaign, a family should know that it's in the interests of the public will always win in court. So if you have a mass campaign alongside your legal case, it's very, very powerful. And so, you know, he was ordained in the end, because the criminal investigation found that there was insufficient evidence to charge any of the officers in my case by the Crown Prosecution Service, even though there was compelling evidence. And then last year we had a gross misconduct case by the Metropolitan Police, where the officers tried to claim, this was 10 years later, by the way, nearly 11 years later since Sean's death, they tried to claim that it was such a long time ago, they cannot remember what happened. But my legal team argued that there was CCTV evidence, and I've kept it in the public domain for 11 years, you know, where I challenged them. It should be scorched in their memories as to what happened. And eventually we did get a public gross misconduct hearing. But, of course, what happened last year is that all of the officers were acquitted, where they brought in new evidence. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And recently I've just heard that the chair of that misconduct hearing, Commander Bennett, who is very high up in the Metropolitan Police and was in charge of drug relations and stuff, he's recently, I found out, been suspended because of he uses drugs. And so he's currently under investigation. And my answer to that is that he must have been high on drugs when he let those officers walk free after killing my brother, Sean Rigg. And so basically, the long and short of it is that nothing happened to the officers. They're still walking free. But my campaign is not over. at all, because what I want to do now is to show the factual evidence in Sean's case.
Good evening, Sister Marcia. What an emotional story. And I'm sure that anyone listening couldn't help but be touched by how it's affected yourself and your family. As a member of the public, as a member of the community, what can we do to support your cause and the cause of others that have experienced similar things to you?
Well, we've obviously seen recently the protests, the Black Lives Matter movement, which has made a vast difference in terms of awareness of the issues of deaths in custody. Now, you know, after the death of George Floyd, where the whole world saw that, even a pandemic couldn't hold back the protests going on in the streets worldwide. And it's vital that we keep the issues of deaths in custody in the UK to bring awareness that it's been happening here for decades. If we could reel off the names, there's been Joy Gardner, Brian Douglas, Roger Sylvester, Colin Roach. It's just endless. So we have to, it's important to bring awareness to the public that these deaths are happening. We have the United Families and Friends campaign, which is a coalition of families whose loved ones have died in custody. It was set up 23 years ago by the families of Brian Douglas, who died in, who was from Ballon. Some of you may know about the case where he was hit over the head with a baton. When the first day that the baton came out, the metal baton that police have, he was hit over the head 11 times his body weight, which killed him. And the mother of Joy Gardner was a Jamaican who had overstayed her time here in the 90s. The police and the immigration officers came to her house and they restrained Joy Gardner with 13 feet of tape around her face in front of her 5-year-old child, who the officers claimed that she was the strongest woman that they've ever seen, and she could throw the officers around the room.
So are there any, I understand there's been so many tragedies, but I'm just mindful of the fact that we do have a limitation on time. Do you have the details of where members of the public who want to lend their support?
Yes.
Do you have an address that you can give us?
Yes, to the United Families and Friends campaign. You can look us up online, or we're on Facebook, and the Mikey Powell Memorial Fund, which is following the death of Mikey Powell in Birmingham. A fund has been set up in order to help fund the families, because one thing we don't receive is legal aid. We don't get automatic funding like from the public, like the police do. And so what families need is funding. You can donate to that page, and that's it really. Support us on the streets when we have protests, and share our videos, share the information on our webs, on your platforms, by looking on the United Families and Friends campaign's Facebook page online.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
For your story, and I lost a brother as well, but we didn't, me, I chose to carry on his legacy by trying to empower and inspire other people, even though I'm still going through my grief and need help myself. So it was just, there's no words. All I can be as a brother, extended family, is be there for you if you need us, legacy, us as individuals. That's all we can do, because, you know, when, you know, your situation, you've got somebody to focus on to get some kind of justice. But my situation, he just passed, you know. So anything we can do on your journey, we will do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's very important that collectively families come together, which is what we are doing now. And collectively, I think we can make a difference. And I think you all need to watch this space. We're coming for them next year. We're not going away. You must hang on to hope, and you must never give up, because that's what they want. But we're not going anywhere, because our brothers and sisters are still dying in custody.
I think we got Deja. Deja, did you want to come in?
Yeah, hi guys. Hi. Marcia, I'm really sorry to hear about your story. And you know, I can't even imagine what you've had to endure. A question that came to mind during your whole involvement with the police and the legal system, did you have any people of colour? So was there anybody in the Metropolitan Police at the time that was black or from an ethnic minority that you dealt with?
Yeah, I did meet people like Leroy Logan from the black police.
Do you feel that their representation with them in the force, was they empathetic, or do you feel if there was more people of colour within the Metropolitan Police, do you think that we wouldn't see as much deaths in custody of our own as we do?
No, that's the answer. Because unfortunately, black police officers kill them too, and they're not speaking out. I mean, some of them are witnesses to these deaths, and they lie. They lie too, understand, because they are protected by the state. I think it's bigger than the police. The state allows them to act with impunity. And, you know, some of them have had to leave the police force, and we have whistleblowers, which is fantastic, which is what we need, because obviously within the police force, there's racism itself. And so we do need more whistleblowers. And I believe that if more police officers spoke out on this issue, it will send a clear message that they themselves are concerned about the issues. Because what happens is they are all painted as bad police officers, but not all police officers are bad. And so the ones that are good, they should be speaking out. But to date, that hasn't. But it is happening, because there's a big inquiry that's going on now called Spy Cops, because families are also infiltrated and they're surveillanced as well when there's a death in custody. I mean, it's huge what happens to families, but people should more speak out in terms, and also MPs. You know, I've approached people like Doreen Lawrence and Diane Abbott and so forth, but and Lammy and all these people. But the issues of deaths in custody, people have not really latched on to us. I don't know what it is, because murder is the ultimate insult that families can conceive, and people seem to be afraid to touch on the subject. I'm not sure.
Okay. I was just wondering if we had more people that looked like us within the establishment, if that would help, but clearly you don't think so. So
yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you, Deja. Thank you, Marcia. Stay with us, Marcia, yeah? Because there's people that are interested in contacting you and impacted by your story. We're going to move on. The last but not least, first I want to say, I've come to learn that there's a saying, blood is thicker than water. How I understand blood thicker than water, in ancient days, tribes used to build relationships based on strengths and weaknesses. So you would have a warring tribe and say a farming tribe. The warring tribe would need provision, and the farming tribe would need protection. The chiefs, the heads of those tribes would come together and cut covenant and say, where I'm weak, you're strong. And that blood covenant they said was thicker than the water that would come from a woman's womb. You can't choose your brothers and sisters, but you can choose who you have purpose with and who you have a connection with. And the next guest, Andre Palmer, is a young man that when I met him, I instantly had a connection with him. He was very much, even though he was younger than me, he was entrepreneurial. He's a family man. He's an artist, traveled the world. Young kids, businessman, and from a family perspective, he's been through his struggles. He's gone through, and he's got to a place of peace. As we know, success is not about what we attain; it's about what we had to go through to get to where we are. And he's got to a place of, I would say, contentment, peace, purpose, and he's prospering. So, and on that note, I just want to bring in Andre, just to share your testimony, your story, and start where you need to start. You've got a bit of time.
Where do I start? I mean, this is a heavy, heavy load to come after all that. Listening to Marcy's stories and reflecting on what happened with Zion and Ashanti as well. So big salutes to all the women that are out there fighting for us and making sure that the family isn't just restricted to our DNA. So for me, as Milo said, I'm quite a multifaceted person. There's a few hats I wear. I'm an artist, I'm a singer, I'm a performer. Check me out online, Andre Melody Palmer. But I'm a father, I'm a husband. I am a social entrepreneur. Which one? Oh, this one. There we go. Hi, everybody. Social entrepreneur. I mainly focus on youth and community and events. Those are kind of the main areas of my my work outputs, I suppose. And a big inspiration behind that is definitely family. And for me, especially my latest offering, as it were, I run a company called the Ethical Events Academy, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. We are an events company, but we also double up as a community interest company where we provide training opportunities for young people to learn creative entrepreneurialism. I'm very passionate about entrepreneurialism, particularly for our community and particularly for young people from the at-risk elements of our community. Let me put it like that. Yeah, those of us that are used to the roads, those of us that are at risk or been susceptible to the things that we see, the things that Zion and Ashanti heroically had to intervene to avert. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I think the concept of family runs very deep for me. It always has done, but it's become even more a central focus of my life and my purpose and what I do. I have an awesome family. When we talk about family, the first reference comes to mind is my mum, who was a superhero as far as I was concerned, in the way she managed to raise us predominantly on her own. And there's 5 of us. And I think reflecting not just on her, because there's a wider family network as well. I come from a massive family on both sides, to be fair. So family has always been
on your dad's side too.
On my dad's side as well. So family for me, family has always been something that I suppose when I was younger, I may have taken for granted and not really realized how much of a great, how can I put it, starting point it is to have that resource. It's a resource. And I think
use it.
Well, yeah, if you use it, if you're aware of it. And I think if you kind of look at family a little bit objectively and take it out of the experience of your own experience with family and just kind of look at how families, not even just in your own experience, but on a global scale work. Like, I don't want to get too conspiracy theory, but, families rule the world. Families own all the finances. Families, empires back in the day, that's families. You gave reference to tribes and how tribes will come together. That's how countries came together. That's how bigger units of power and resource were formed. And so for me, you can look at family from so many different aspects. You mentioned different aspects of family, the family you choose, which is also a super powerful thing. Milo's a brother to me, someone I refer to as a brother. Like, I had no, I think it was like maybe 2 days ago, he randomly dropped this one on me and I was like, okay, cool, because it's bro. Do you know what I mean? And everything else kind of will flow afterwards because we had that kind of a relationship. And it's always been that way, to be fair. Our relationship has always been like that, like kind of off the fly. And for me, personally, family has been what I would say, I'm the kind of person where I need a focus. You know, I'm a bit of a firefly. I've got lots of energy. I've got lots of dynamism within me. And without having, I had children quite young as well. So I've got 5 beautiful children. Shout out to Shazaya, Shion, Shinomi, Shikari, King. When you guys get a chance to watch this, don't get excited just to hear their names. So there you go. And my eldest is 18 age in her. And I know for a fact that my lifestyle changed dramatically the moment I became a parent. Because, and for me, if there's one thing I want to focus on to talk about family, because I'm dittering about because there's so many things coming into my head. But if there's one focal point I want to really focus on, which I think is quite relevant to some of the things we've talked about as well, is children. Because for me, that is the epitome of family. That is that, like, there's all kinds of different aspects of family, but the highest echelon for me of what needs to be protected, what needs to be served, what needs to be honored, what needs to be nurtured, what needs to be invested in is children. For me, my children have been a focal point to drive me away from recklessness. You know what I mean? And being somewhat, especially if we talk about family in our community, in the Black community. I grew up in it. I'm 37, and when I grew up in the early 80s, I remember a Black father in the family setting was a rare scene. Quite literally, like, I grew up on an estate where I can count on my hand, less than a hand. You know, like the families that actually had a dad in the home. You know what I mean? And everybody had the same family unit. You know, and that is a massive factor, I suppose, as to how one views the world. Because until my child, until I became a father, I remember having a conversation with my mum about the birth of my son that was to come. And I remember just having a natural assumption that my children would live with their mother if me and them was to split up. Like, if me and the mother was to not be in a relationship, then, you know, naturally she's going to have the children, and, you know, maybe I'll have them on the weekend or whatever it be. Like, I kind of had this automated thought that I wouldn't have, my role was less important. And that's obviously because of where I've come from. I've come from an environment where there's an imbalance. You've got super shira women, and for what my experience was, a lack of that where the men were concerned. In fact, and it wasn't just in the home. I saw that in school. I saw that in the religious institutions. I saw it across the board. I saw it in the sense that if it wasn't for the sisters, as we've seen testimony today again, we as a people wouldn't even still be here. Like, we can go far back into slavery if we want to, and quite literally, if the women weren't holding it down when the men, for whatever reason, whether they could or couldn't or decided not to, we wouldn't be here. So we can't talk about children without honoring and remembering mothers. You understand? So obviously, I mean, as a father, I have to give that honor and that respect. Big up wifey, Rachel at home as well. But the reason why I wanted to make this emphasis about children is because, in my opinion, children don't have a choice to come here. So therefore, there's 2 people at least who are responsible for that life and for the development of that person, their influence on what they're going to blossom into society, what thoughts and attributes go into that child. And if your focus isn't for the best benefit of that child, you're already doing it a disservice. And oftentimes, I feel like we can get that's easier said than done. We're all human beings. We've all got our deficits and our wants and desires. But for me, again, if we were to really focus on what's the best you can get out of family, and I'm bringing it right down to the nucleus in the context of family, because as I said, we can go as wide as empires or as far as, brethrens that are like blood thicker than water kind of a vibe, or we can talk literally right down to your own home, and what you're responsible for, or how you was raised, because we all have that experience one way or the other. I remember that if our focal point is making sure that the next generation are better off than we was, in a holistic way. I'm not just talking about finances, and I'm not just talking about because one grew up without a dad that my children automatically are going to have the best experience of life because I'm around. No, it's actually about me growing in my capacity and learning that my deficits have to be overcome because I can't pass them down. And I don't know how much time you got, but I could list them, in terms of deficits, but
got
I
5
suppose it's a
minutes.
good point. For, well, I could waffle forever, so it's a good point for you guys to ask me what you want to know, I suppose. You know what I mean? In terms of my journey and family.
Can I just ask you a question? I mean, I grew up a couple of decades, probably. I grew up back in the 60s and the 70s, where in my community in the UK, there were lots of families, lots of fathers. That was the norm. Yeah. And obviously, my children, I've got children older than you, who probably I didn't replicate necessarily what I grew up in. Yeah. But in terms of the phenomenon of young people finding family in friends and in gangs and within their peer group, how did you find when you were sort of raised in that environment? You know, how did it affect you? Did you look
Heavily.
outside of your
Very heavily.
biological family?
I'll tell you, I've always been quite a single-minded person. I'll say that. You know what I mean? I've always been. I'm not your follow fashion type. I'm not really someone that I would say buckle to peer pressure and things like that. But and even though I say that, and I'd also add to that tally that I was a young man that was quite resourceful. You know what I mean? I did, most of my peers didn't necessarily have all the options that I had. I was quite intelligent. I was quite talented. I did a lot from a young age. So I was doing like a lot of modeling, acting, dancing. I saw outside of the hood from I was quite young. You know what I mean? So I had a different trajectory from most of my peers. But at 10 years onto that, by the time I'd left school and was kind of heading to the, you know, the 18, 19 ages, I was fully just as susceptible to all the madness that we see happening with young people. I've been involved in dramas relating to gun violence. I've witnessed and seen all manner of traumatic scenes. I've had my experience of you know, the whole hustling and the whole shebang. I grew up in the hood, and the reality is, no matter how single-minded you are, your environment will affect you. It's designed that way. You understand? And so, to answer your question more directly, it was as I said, it wasn't so much as now, which I think is an evolution from my era even, do you know what I mean? Which is because in our era, we had what I suppose what some might refer to as a gang, but if you called us a gang, we'd probably run you off the ends. Like, who are you talking to? Do you know what I mean? That would have been a derogatory term to even refer to us as a gang. Whereas now, as you know, you've got gang. Basically, it's the other way around.
Like a family.
It was always family. Do you know what I mean? In fact, I belong to a collection, big group of people that we used to refer to ourselves as the CMB. I don't know if you guys remember our old school film, Wesley Snipes, called New Jack City. And they had you remember the Neo Brown and the Cash Money brothers, and you know had the saying, "Am I my brother's keeper?" So you ain't seen the film, man. It says, "Yes, I am." That's what the crowd say back to every time he asks the question to his brother. Do you understand? So we had that little saying amongst us. And to give you a good example of even that, so when I reached a point in 2003, just before the birth of my son, where I was at I would say I was probably at a real in-depth of depression, and it's only in reflection I'm realizing that's what it was. And at the time, this is me having the mental pressures of being a young father. I've taken on the role of my oldest daughter. She's not mine biologically, but I've taken her on at that stage. The lady I'm with is pregnant with my son at the time. And for the first time in my life, I seemingly feel like every day it's going in a negative direction as opposed to positive. As I said, from I was a young age, I was always quite resourceful. I never struggled finding work and things like that. But from the moment that I'd realized, you know, I've got a child on the way, I couldn't get a job. I was unemployed, and it just seemed like stress upon stress upon stress. Worse is still when I'm around my man them, and I'll be honest, most of my friends at that time were career criminals. You know what I mean? From where we've grown and come up from, there was a consensus of that frustration. You understand? Like, and this is where we're talking about how environments shape. You understand? Because you get to a certain age where you no longer see yourself as a child, but you're not quite a man yet either. Because to be a man, you're independent. You have means to look after yourself and your own if you are responsible for that. And I grew up in an era, as I said, where like teenage pregnancy was rife in the borough in Lambeth. So, and most of my friends are a little bit older than me, including Milo. Not as old as Milo, but you know, look. But I always grew up with friends a little bit older than me. And and so by the time I was like 19, 20, 21 in 2003, most of my friends all had 2-3 children, couple baby, like that. You know, as a standard, as a norm. And I'll be honest, I remember kind of looking at it and thinking, that's not going to be me kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? But I remember getting to a point, because from school days, even when you grow up with that kind of dualistic experience, where I was that guy in school, for example, I was the class prefect. I would have been the head of the youth council. I was that guy, you know what I mean? But simultaneously, I want that dry week. I mean, I'm Jekyll and Hyde. I was that Jekyll and Hyde character in school. Whereas most of my friends were just not in school, kicked out a long time. Do you understand, basically? So I kind of always, this is what I was referring to about even having those options that a lot of my peers didn't have. But I got to a point where that didn't work. I suppose it might be a bit of a reflection of my own character. And I suppose I'm a little bit of an extremist. I tend to go 100 at whatever I'm doing. So when this 50-50 thing now work, you know what I mean? And more importantly, now the pressures are here because I've got this child coming. I remember I've got this subconscious chip on my shoulder that I was raised without a dad. You understand? And he didn't do what he's supposed to do by me. So that can't reach my picnic. You know, that can't happen. And so I've got this almost, because nobody else is pressurizing me. You know what I mean? But I've got in my mind the provision I want to have in place before my child comes. It's not there. And at this time, I'm in this relationship, which I know really isn't going to go anywhere. But my children are here. We just moved to a new place. It needs carpet. It needs things. You know what I mean? And I'm frustrated. And I remember calling a friend of mine. I won't call his name. I could, but no need. Anyway, good friend of mine and family. You understand? That's what I'm saying. Certain friends are like family. If that's how I am as an individual, though. I don't really have friends, to tell you the truth. You know, like that. I really, like, lots of people know me and I know lots of people. I've got lots of associates. But if you reach a certain place of intimacy with me, you're dealt with like family. You understand? And that comes with no filters, you know? So, I'm going to call him, could be all him know me at that, but am I right? But I remember calling my friend because he was someone that could relate to me and my upbringing, my experience, especially from a spiritual perspective. I was raised very much in a God-fearing home and given much keys to spirituality from a young age. So this was a brother that, even in the bigger circle of us, could relate to that aspect of our heritage. So I could reason with him. But simultaneously, you know they say, during my old school church days, because I did that too, there was a saying, they used to say something like, you can say things with your mouth, but God knows the intent of your heart. So I remember reaching the end of my frustration. I remember, man, this is the time in my life when I'm waking up every morning, and before I've even opened my eyes, like consciously, like as soon as I'm aware I'm awake, my first utterance is, let's kiss my teeth. I remember it. I remember it vividly. You know what I mean? Like waking up every morning and before I even open my eyes, the first thing I did is, it's another day. Do you know what I mean? And this is because I'm going through this frustration of trying to do right. It's not seeming to work. I've been on this journey, especially as a young artist, from a very young age. So I had this vision of myself. I'm going to be the next Usher Raymond from I was like 8 years old or something. And it wasn't a fantasy. I was active. Parents didn't make enough money out of me when I was young. Like I was doing stuff, Bob Marley videos, modeling through different agencies and stuff. So by the time I'm reaching, as I said, a certain age, that expectancy is there. And now this hunger's there as well because there's this need. And like I said, you're not a child anymore. If you want trainers or you want to go on a holiday, you're not going to mummy at 18, 19. You understand? You're either going to hit the road or you've got to have some other means to cover that.
So just to kind of keep you on track,
Yeah.
I got up to the point where you were making this phone
call. So I made this phone call. So he turns up and I've explained all that I've just explained to him, saying, bro, I'm at the end of my tether. You know what I mean? I've been, you know me, and he knows my journey and could relate. And his response was, you know what the right thing is to do. Because at this time I was kind of battling between becoming a Christian and changing my life completely. You know what I mean? Like, and the whole dynamism of, getting a new life within Christ and all of that comes with that whole package for those who are familiar with that religious walk. And I remember voicing these words specifically. I said, I'm going to be the wickedest demon on road right about now. And I meant it. Because I said, that's that extremism in me. I was frustrated and I'm at a point where I have to go all out one way or the other. Because me trying to do this little thing every now and then and trying this and trying that, and it's not working. And my brother responded to me and he said, you know what? He said, you know how it is, you're my brother's keeper. Same way he said it. So in other words, he was saying, if you're going to do the right thing, you'll always be my brother. And simultaneously said, but if you want to do this road thing, and he took out 2 ounces of illegal substances same time and said, right now, things are move, money I make. You understand? So I can plug you in tomorrow. And I remember, you know, firming them up and yeah, give thanks, but the next day I got a phone call saying I had a job. So I'm like, look how God answered prayer. You know, you're thinking like, because he knows I'm on that tittering. And we don't have time for me to finish the fullest of that story. But cut a long story short, the truth of the matter is, as much as I was saying it's one way or the other, I knew where I was swinging. I didn't call pastor. I didn't call my mum. You know what I mean? I called my dad that I know was eating on the roads. You know, like that? And it was by the grace of God, because it was that was a Thursday I had that conversation with him. The Friday I got the phone call to say I had a job. By the Sunday, I was in a hospital with a whole life-changing situation, where my whole life was turned upside down, where my health was completely taken away from me as a young 21-year-old man. Just like that, out of the blue, crazy health situation.
What was that?
It was, I had what's referred to as a fistula. So I had a hole between my bowel and my bladder, which was, it got caught onto because I had an accident at home. So when I went to the hospital to check out what was going on, they said, oh, it's just a little small thing like that. Because you're a young man, you're healthy, you know, we'll keep you on antibiotics and monitor it. The worst case thing to be, you know, like surgery and so forth. And then within a few days, they're like, we have to have an emergency surgery. You've got a fistula like that. And to be fair, like I said, you're asking me questions that I opened up long stories, but I'll tell you quickly. I deteriorated rapidly within the hospital within a few days from this initial accident, to the point where I saw my body doing things that I didn't think were humanly possible. I've always been a squeamish young man, you know what I mean? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the catheter. Do you know what a catheter is? Right. So I've woken up with this catheter in me. I don't know what that is, you know, and within a few days, things that are supposed to come out the front are coming out the back and vice versa. You understand? So I'm literally losing my mind, because 2 days ago, everything was supposed to, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. You understand? At this point, my child's mother was pregnant, 7 months pregnant, so he could come any moment, you know? And I'm just thinking, and I just got the job just got confirmed today, but I was supposed to start work today, and I'm bedbound. And then I mean, they were telling me about emergency operation for 8 hours, 2 surgeons on me, 6 months in hospital recovery. I'm gonna have a colostomy bag for years, if not for life. Like basically presenting a lifestyle to me that I couldn't accept. You know what I mean? And that was a massive. There's been 2 massive transitional years in my life. One was 2003, which I talked about when I met my wife, when my son was born, when I became Christian, when I went through this traumatic experience in hospital, which ended in a miraculous experience, because as crazy as I got there, within 9 days I was gone, no surgery. And when I went back over a little over a month ago, they couldn't even see where the scar tissue was. So another sermon, another time, you know, that kind of thing. But to know that, just to give you an example again of how family played such a major factor in that as well, because at the time, a cousin of mine had a dream about the whole scenario, and I come from a very spiritually inclined family, not just a religious lot. You know what I mean? Literally, like interpreters of dreams, healers, and so forth is all that hocus pocus stuff is common amongst us. You know what I mean? In my family, and I remember a cousin of mine had a dream, and he was told not to tell me the dream. He told everybody else, so everybody else kind of was at ease. And I remember when my mum had come to see me in the hospital, and I was telling her what these doctors are saying, and I'm distraught, I'm in tears, telling her, you know, life's never going to be the same as it were. And she's like, her response was, so is that it then? And man, I tell you, I think it's the first time I looked at my mum like I would tell her bad words. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean is that it? You know, you're a miss kind of thing. And she said, so is that it then? Do you give up? Is that it then? You say you just give up? And that threw a curveball, you know what I mean? Because you know me, I give up. We don't give up. We are that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That never came in. And her third line was what really hit it home. She said, what God says and what man says is 2 different things. And for someone that was pursuing religion at the time so fervently, for I'd say at least the 6-7 months prior to that, more so than any time prior in my life, to know that when trouble really lick you, I catch a shot, as they say. Like I literally forgot about God. From the moment I entered the hospital, I remember when they was telling me about all the drama of what's going to become of me, all I could think of in my head was, if they don't wake me up normal, nobody will wake me up. This is what I didn't verbalize it, but this is what I was genuinely thinking inside of my head. I was thinking, if they can't wake me up, because I'm supposed to be the next Usher Raymond. I've got my son's about to be born. I've got life to live. I can't be what they're potentially, you know.
So fast forwarding, I mean, that sounds like a seriously traumatic experience, and that must have taken its toll.
Yeah.
but from struggle to success. Tell us about what you're doing now.
Well, what I'm doing now, mainly, as I said, my family is a massive focal point. I run a whole range of community initiatives through the different mediums that I have, mainly Ethical Events Academy, but there's also the Lambeth Emerge Foundation. There's also my wife's organization that she runs a black business consultancy called Black Maven. And I'm basically sharing. I think the biggest thing that is a massive asset in my family is transparency and realness, and that wasn't always the case. That's chapter 2. I'll tell you about 2016 when I had to learn to tell the truth. But the reality is that is really the lifeblood of what holds my family together. That realness, that transparency, and being able to deal with whatever it is for real. As in there's no pretense. So when I've got to cry, as I did once, as I said in 2016, I have to apologize to my children when I'm realizing that my antics out of road with women and all kinds of other scenarios are having an effect on them that I didn't even see because I was too busy with my antics. You know what I mean? Until it became a point where it's now apparent to me. And I had to apologize to them and explain to them why that's not on.
How did you apologize?
How did I apologize? I sat them down. We're communication is not something we struggle with in my family. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a talker. So we had one of our family circles, as we would, to kind of sit down and reason about things. Because at the time, we was going through issues. I was actually on a break from the missus. Me and the missus actually split up during that period of time because of a whole combination of issues. And I remember my main focus, again, it was a refocus. Sometimes we get so caught up, as I was explaining, even as parents, even as the mother and the dad, do you know what I mean? Like we get so caught up in our issues and in our scenarios that we're actually not prioritizing them. And
so how many people in your family at that
I
time?
have five children.
5 children and
my
a wife.
Yeah.
And then you was out on the road doing, living a different life.
Well, me from put it this way, from before me even know how lady and man feel together, I have plenty of women in my life. Literally, that's been.
So would you say you was the black sheep of the family at that time?
No, I would not say that. More like the black lion, that sheep. But jokes aside,
but what would you say to the listeners
that
are not, because you have 2 types of members of the family. You have the family members that everybody are attracted to.
Yeah,
the ones that, as you say, they have the prayer meetings.
Yeah,
they have the
well, that's if you have that in your family. That
they're the
that's
central
for
point.
granted.
Everybody gravitate toward them.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that everybody gravitate, and then you have the so-called black sheep of the family, the old cars.
Yeah.
I'm saying the one that is because I've studied what black sheep means here, and I'm going to read it. We only have 5 minutes, but I think it's necessary because there's some
black sheep out there we need to relate to.
No, especially in this time.
No, truly.
There's people that feel outcast, maybe not feel included, not appreciated, respected, maybe not listened to, maybe hurt. You know what I'm saying? Because hurt people end up hurting people. But a black sheep in the English language is an idiom used to describe an odd and disreputable member of a group, especially within the family, outcast, prodigal, disgrace, less valuable than a white sheep. Yeah, in the 16th century, their color was considered the devil's mark. So at that time, would you say you was?
No, not at all. That's the truth. Remember I told you I've always been this dualistic character. And the reality is, when I talked about integrity and truth as well, and being transparent. So if we're going to talk about let's talk about fidelity, let's talk about marriage, let's talk about that aspect. That's all. I've always been quite transparent. The only person I was ever lying to was my wife. You know like that? Everybody else in my life knew I had multiple women. and everybody was playing that role to an extent. You know what I mean? I said, I mean, not necessarily at first, but you know, you're growing out your shoes and feel like, you know, you get to a certain place. But then what I didn't realize, as I said, was how not having your foundation right is it's just a slow poison. It's a slow poison. You know that, the house will come tumbling down at some point if you don't address.
You started off talking about the kids. I want you to finish talking about the kids.
Yeah, because that was what, as I said, that was the focus. That was what, I'm the kind of person where my children are my religion. Do you understand? My family as a whole is my religion, but the children are the focal point. Because like I said, my wife's got a choice. I have a choice. We chose each other. We chose to have them. You know, and we chose to do whatever we choose to do. They didn't make any choices. They didn't choose me. They didn't choose her. They didn't choose whatever palaver we might want to get up to that might affect them. You understand? So if we reverse the priority of who needs to be taken care of here and what the focus is for the long term, you see how your behaviors and your decisions now match up in line with something that's a lot more sustainable, a lot more healthy, a lot more virtuous, a lot more loving, a lot more caring, a lot more empathetic, a lot more respectful, you know? And for each one, everybody's journey is different, you know? Some people may have had a different grounding where certain triggers wouldn't be their triggers, you know? And certain problems that I may have had wouldn't have been their problems. But this is a universal thing, it's just that when you talk about children, because that for me is the ultimate, they represent the purpose of a family. You understand? If we were talking about family, you cannot talk about family without talking about legacy. You understand? Because then otherwise you're just talking about the past, you know? And family is, for me, is about what's coming next. What are we doing to prepare and contribute to make sure what happens next is a development and an enhancement of where we're at now. For me, that's purpose. For me, that's life. Because to be honest, there's so many things in life we don't know about. You know, we could argue about religion and spirituality and various other things all day long. But there's one thing that's for sure, is that we're gonna pass on, you know, and our time has a limit, and that there are those that are coming behind us. And this is why I talk about it's not just down to DNA. So again, shout outs to the young Shiros, and anybody else that might be of a younger age that's watching, because that's really my passion and my focus. It's not just about my DNA, because when I started my work, it was off the back of seeing the pain of people who were just as close to me, may as well have been my family. When my younger brother got shot up, and 2 weeks later, a good friend of mine, his younger brother got murdered. Very connected scenario. That's two of my younger brothers that got. Do you understand? I didn't feel any less cut up about losing my brother, R.I.P. Adrian Marriott. Do you know what I mean? Than I did about the same, you know, the same scenario hitting my younger brother 2 weeks before. When I was reading about a story in the papers about this young man who I won't name his name because he's a good friend of mine as well, a family member. In fact, he's the niece of the young man who I just mentioned, R.I.P. And it was the Evening Standard. They were doing like a week-long special about the knife crime pandemic and what's going on with these young people. And they had a focal week-long special on this one young brother who's practically like as good as my son, Milo. You understand? And I can't lie, I'm reading it and I've got mixed emotions. One hand, I'm angry and I'm frustrated. Another hand, I'm empathetic and I'm scared for him. Another hand, I'm very proud of him to kind of step out of that, if you want to refer to it as a comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? But step out of it. What he was doing was not the norm for a road youth. You know, to go and just bear it all to the paper and say, this is my lifestyle. You know, this is what's happening with me. I don't want to do that, but I come from this. This is my background. I've got certain things over my head from without a choice, just because of where I live or who my family was. You know, like that. And I grew up into that. And yeah, if I go there, so I've got to walk my shank or my dog. And if I go there, so then I'm evading police or whatever. This is my lifestyle. And the Evening Standard were trying to help him. They were giving him work opportunities and different things like that. And the reason why it frustrated me is because I'm thinking, why is the Evening Standard, the strangers, having to intervene here?
Tell us.
And I tell you what, this is the last point I'll make. why it really struck home to me is because I'm reading it and everything that he's doing. I'd stopped at that time doing the youth and community stuff for about the best part of 8 to 10 years because of various reasons before lifestyle changes, getting married, having more kids. The youth and community stuff at first was never something that I built to sustain me. It was very grassroots and organic how it started. So I kind of made a decision back then, and that was like 2 years ago. And then the following January, My son got stabbed. My big son. Thank God he's alive and there was no lasting damage. But I'll be honest with you, I wholeheartedly perceive and believe that if I had not already had my mind in a certain trajectory about young people, and I can tell you specifically what it was the frustration I had to then mirror it to myself. I'm reading it, I was on my way back from a gig somewhere on the paper, on the tube, and I'm frustrated because this ain't a stranger to me, and I'm just picturing all these other strangers and how they might be perceiving this young man who I know from his sucking dummy and got nappy. You understand? And I realized that the same frustration I have towards them, I should really have it to myself, because the reality is, unless we are doing something, we've reached a stage with this issue in our community that it's at pandemic level. So if you're not proactively doing something about it, as far as I'm concerned, you're part of the problem. Where if we're not engaging, just as this, as you said, with the young ladies, they had a choice. They could have easily walked on, they could have easily just filmed and not thought too much of it. But something moved her to say, no, she's got to step in and try and make a change. You understand? And the reality is, I thought to myself, I can't wait until it's my child before I decide to do that, because that's what I saw happening too many times. It's only when it's RIP or we're going to visit someone where we shouldn't be having to visit them that we're actually starting to consciously start to think about reducing the issues that we see that are affecting our young people. And I made that decision, like I said, and I don't think I could ever turn back from it. You know what I mean? That's my heart. At the minute, when I first started my work, there was a whole bunch of different things, everything from heritage to grant making schemes to sexual health clinics, all kinds of things aimed at young people. Now my focus is, as I said, a lot more on entrepreneurialism, maybe because I'm a bit older and I can see that you're going to need something to sustain you beyond, and I can show you to do that.
Isn't it?
So the last one, yes. All right, you know, honest truth, this one here is crazy because I didn't plan this.
We've got 1 more minute.
I didn't plan this. But please follow me on social media at Mr. Melody _Red Royale. It is the name of my new XXX Ginger brand. I should show it off quickly. Well, I
think Baz is going to order a pallet.
No, let me tell you why simplicity. Let me show you a message. You're going to be frightened in a minute. We've been talking about it. And he knows my wife.
Has he got any herbal remedies?
Soon, yeah, man, the CBD's coming. It's coming. So this is what I call the XXX Ginger Premium Sorrow. Yeah?
Sorrow.
It's sorrow. It's a sorrow and ginger drink.
Christmas.
It's for every day. You understand? But it's full of health benefits. You understand? This is ginger, pimento, and hibiscus.
Okay.
And water, little sweet, no more, you understand?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay, so
but the reality is, you have to go taste it, man. Someone's got to taste it on camera to know the level.
Don't worry,
So I started this. So don't label. No, listen to me. This is what I'm telling you. I started this. Listen to me. Listen to me. Friday gone. Friday gone. Friday gone. I plug in time. Friday gone. Yeah. Friday gone. I put up on my WhatsApp status that I do so. I do it for my family and stuff. But I put it on my WhatsApp status. Lockdown. I bought a couple of bottles. I put up a Facebook status. Before Saturday afternoon, I was completely sold out at the first batch.
Wow.
I didn't do no promo. Me not even have a label.
How
You
many
understand?
bottles was that?
My first batch, 30.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
It's a budding business.
And it ain't stopped.
Yeah.
So we need to talk. Because you have a few budding business. It's go nicely. Yes, Mr. Basil.
Well, on that note, my brother, it's been amazing. It's been entertaining. It's been interesting. Listening
Thank you.
to your journey, and I commend you because you've challenged yourself, and that's the best that we can do as men. And you're challenging us now, and everyone that's watching.
Especially when you talk about your relationship with reconciling it with your wife.
We've not even touched on that. That's a whole show, and a whole other conversation.
Next
but 100%, it's essential because it's stuff that wasn't taught.
Right.
I had to learn it the hard way.
So on that note, I think it's that time where we're gonna say goodbye. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long 6 weeks. Met some interesting people. I know generally we've started late almost every week, but we won't talk about that.
But you just
next time we'll have to try and be a bit more prompt. So DJ, you're not here.
Keep order.
But as we say, it's the beginning. It's not where you start. It's where you're in. So this is the beginning of something that hopefully will grow and develop and inspire and do what it's meant to do. So well done.
I just want to add to that, Basil. I want to thank the the Lottery Fund and HM government for their support, because without them, we wouldn't have had these guests, the time, the studio, and all the specialists that have come over. We've had educational specialists, psychotherapists, we've had counselors, we've had health specialists, we've had restorative justice specialists, we've had youth services specialists. So we thank you for all of the input, the feedback. We've had about 40 emails, with great feedback, positive feedback. So we're going to take all that back and see if we can come back with a better, refined. Because as Lee said, this has been organic. This has been, we're all, well, not all of us, but me. This was my first time. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm sure I'm going to get better, and I'm sure people like Deisha Gordon is going to get better. And we thank everybody that's taken part in it. But I just want to say this before I go. Yeah. My prayer is that we use this time to protect our mindset, use this time to protect our energy, our hearts, our peace, and our dreams. Because that's, in the end, that's what it's about, the young people, So I thank you all, Lee, Deisha, Basil, for the 6 weeks. It's been amazing. Lee, do you want to come in and say anything?
So how do we close? So again, thank you to the guests. Zion, Ashanti, we commended them earlier on, and we're going to give them £500.
Yeah.
And also I want to throw in a couple of books.
Yes, the louder we sing.
Yeah, the louder I was saying. What was we giving them away to some of the?
Yes, I've got 10 books.
Okay, so we're going to be giving away some of the books, and also got to say big thank you and enough respect to Marcia Rigg, who
yes, Marcia,
very inspirational.
Yeah, and I feel you. I don't even hear you. I feel you, because we've both been on that journey. And we're both continuing to do the works, because when you go through stuff like that, the hope that you have going forward is that other people don't have to experience what you've gone through.
Precisely.
So, when some people see us and think, how do you still carry on? Why, what is it? But that is it. Our loved ones have to matter. Before the Black Lives Matter movement came about, we was always saying our loved ones' lives mattered.
Family
Do you
first.
understand?
Family
So,
matters.
in their name, we have to make change, basically. And just to kind of wrap up, we spoke about the show's called Struggle to Success and Wellbeing. And my slogan that's got me through all of the hurdles and obstacles that I've had to go through life has been the purpose outweighs the challenge. Even when you said, your purpose is your children. So whatever your purpose is, all the challenges that come, as long as you got that purpose and that focus, that's the thing that you've got to just keep focus on. So on that note, thank you to everyone. I don't know if Deja wants to say anything before we go.
Oh yeah, hi guys. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our guests that we've had on over the past 6 weeks. Thank you to all the viewers that have spent time with us every Wednesday. We really appreciate all your feedback, all your comments. And I would like to, just say that Struggle to Success and Wellbeing, it was an idea that Marlo and I spoke about, and, it came to reality. And it's been a very touching 6 weeks, hearing everybody's stories and listening to everybody's struggle. And ultimately, the light at the end of the tunnel is that out of your struggle, you can have great successes. On what Lee's mentioned, within your purpose, you will find your passion, or within your passion, there lies a purpose. And obviously, Marcia, your story is so profound and so great. Your passion has been about your brother's death, and it's succumbed to it's now a purpose. And I'm sure that it will help lots of other people. The the companies that you've opened and the, you know, all the other agencies that you're helping and participating in. And ultimately, I just want to say, look, guys, if you have any comments about the show, or you feel that there were areas that we could have explored more, your views and comments are welcome. And I'm hoping that there will be another series of Struggle to Success and Wellbeing. And, you know, just, yeah, thanks for my host. It's been nice sitting down with you guys and hearing Amel's perspective on some of these topics. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Disha. And thank you to Media Net Live that made it possible in the studio with the lockdown. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. God bless you and good night.
Marcia,
Thank you all
Marcia,
very
do you
much
want to
for having me. This is,
Marcia,
yes, thank you all very much for having me. This is a great platform. You can use your own media, and you need to come back because I think we can do something. Let's talk, because I'm sure there's something I'd like to propose to you guys. This is absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you and good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
No.